All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Jaron Boots Ennis and what his plans are relative to Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., and chasing them to 154 if he can't get those fights at 147. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about one of my favorite young fighters, Jaron Boots Ennis out of Philadelphia. One of the best welterweights, one of the best fighters in the world, in my opinion, already. I know there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, well, you know, what has he done? Who has he fought? Man, look, you watch boxing long enough, you know a special fighter when you see a special fighter. And I'm not the only one saying that about Jaron Ennis. Pretty much everybody else, every professional fighter that's watching this guy fight, sees this guy fight, knows what this dude is. You have guys like Sean Porter say that this guy may be the best fighter, the most talented fighter since Roy Jones Jr. And let me tell you, that says a lot, because guess who came around after Roy Jones Jr.? Floyd Mayweather Jr. So big compliments being paid for this guy. So when you hear me talk about Jaron Ennis, please understand that this is not something you're just pulling out of the clouds. This guy really is like that. Now, before I get into the subject matter of the video, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. And if you are a longtime subscriber and supporter, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Make sure you hit that like button and share the video so we can help the channel grow. Thank you very much. All right, so Jaron Ennis, 147-pound contender, the mandatory for Errol Spence Jr., and a top four, and I do believe he's in the top 5 of every major sanctioning body. So is positioned in every sanctioning body to become a mandatory challenger for the champion. Now, as we know, the biggest fight that people are talking about in that division, though, is Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford. Everybody wants to see that fight. It's pretty much all that's really being discussed in boxing right now. Even though that's not their fault, I blame that a large part on Canelo Alvarez, because if Canelo Alvarez would actually fight somebody, if he would actually fight Charlo, fight Andrade, we could have some other real big fights. But he went over there on his Eurobum tour and cashed out. So the big fights that we have right now is the Errol Spence Jr. Terrence Crawford fight. And a big fight it is. However, may very well be the case that it's not the fight between the two best welterweights, because there's a very significant chance that the best welterweight is actually Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis has a lot of advantages over both Errol and Terrence in the ring. His size, his speed, his punching power. I think he's bigger than both. I think he's got faster hands than both. I think he hits harder than both. Of course, the big problem that I would have with him is obviously, the inexperience in big moments. I've seen him, kind of behave a little bit green in the fight that he had with Chris Van Heerden, and he was just overjoyed with happiness and bubbliness after his fight with Castillo Clayton. So I just see clearly there is still that kid in him, and you never know when the bright lights happen against the guys that are really that who are that experienced. Right now, Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford have said, both of them said that they're going to fight that they are going to fight for this fight. Then they're going to 154 pounds. Errol said if he can't get the Terrence Crawford fight, he's going to 154. Terrence can't get the Errol Spence Jr. fight, he's going to go up there to 154 and try to challenge Jermell Charlo. Now, the challenge of Jermell Charlo is going to take him at least a solid year, because Jermell Charlo's next fight has been announced for 6 months from now. Really irritating, man, man, it's July. Why are you announcing a fight for January? Can't you get that fight sometime in October? Anyway, but hopefully the October one is for Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. But regardless, those guys are looking to move up there to 154. And you would think then that would prevent Jermell Charlo from getting a fight with those guys. But he says, look, man, I'll move up to 154. They can't escape me forever. right? If I'm down, I can win a belt at 154, one of these vacant belts, I'm going to get a shot for him. But after that, if those guys are up there at 154 and they're still fighting, I'm going to go up to 154 pounds and fight those guys up at 154. And they can't go to 160 because this kid can go to 160 pounds as well. And I'm going to tell you, man, I absolutely positively hope that this actually is that is actually what happens, that Errol gets that. I mean, that Jaron Ennis gets a fight with Errol or gets a fight with Terence Crawford, because I would like to see this young dude actually be able to be in a situation where the torch is passed to him, unlike what has happened with all of the welterweights before that, right? Now, think about it in this sense by what I mean by that. You had Floyd Mayweather Jr., who was the big guy at 147 pounds. He fights Manny Pacquiao. He fights Manny Pacquiao. He fights, a bunch of other guys, Virgil Ortiz, Robert the Ghost Guerrero, Juan Manuel Marquez, but he never fought Sean Porter. He never fought Keith Thurman. He never fought Kell Brook, right? So he retires, and none of those guys get the big boost that comes from that big win that you get by beating a big name fighter. If Errol Spence Jr. beats Terence Crawford and that means he's the top dude in boxing, huge situation. Would love to see Jaron Ennis get that shot, man, because if Jaron Ennis is able to fight him and lose in a good fight, it still catapults Jaron Ennis if it's a good competitive fight, similar to the way that Floyd Mayweather Jr. did Canelo Alvarez, right? Canelo didn't win that fight, but it still boosted Canelo Alvarez up fighting on those undercards, right? So I like the fact that Jaron says that he can move up to 154. If those guys aren't going to be in 147, they can go to 154. Because once they win at 147, they can go anywhere with the accolades associated with being the guy that won what could very well be the fight of the decade, right? And we're in 2022, so I would say the best fight since 2000 I think it's probably the best fight since 2017. Actually, because I think the only other ones besides that was Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. And then you had, who else? Some people might have considered Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua a fight like that, even though it really wasn't, not like that. This fight with Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford is one of the biggest fights that we've had this century, right? Not the biggest, clearly, because that would be Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. You also had fights like in the beginning of the this century with Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis, big fights like that. But all in all, man, it's just a gigantic fight. And it would be great to see a guy as talented as Jaron Ennis be able to be introduced on that stage. And I think he really should go out of his way to try to make that happen. Now, because I don't know if there's really anybody else. I guess if Virgil Ortiz really takes off, they could be a battle with him and Virgil Ortiz. And then, of course, there's Conor Benn, who's out there in the UK, but I just don't think he's that level of fighter. But anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.